On today's Locked On Jayhawks, Shakeel Moore and Rylan Griffen show the path for Kansas to be at their very best this season as we recap the Jayhawks' 19-point victory over Arizona State.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here at D Johnson Radio on Twitter, and thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Thank you for tuning into the show, whether it's your first time, you're an everyday, or tuning into each and every show. You were ready for Shakeel Moore to dunk the ball. He hadn't dunked the ball yet this year, and we talked about it on a previous episode way back in the summer. I retweeted this, go on Twitter at D Johnson Radio. Best sub 6'3" dunker in KU basketball history. When I say history, it only goes back like 15 years, but he had the most career dunks most of the season, had that huge dunk in this one, and that felt like the play of the game for KU. We're going to recap Kansas, Arizona State, 74-55, as Shakeel Moore and Rylan Griffen had some big performances for KU, not just for this game, but moving down the road. Kind of opposite for AJ Storr in this game. So we'll break all that down and more on today's episode, get to our game awards and what is next. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can go from big upsets to game-winning drives. The NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Kansas 74, Arizona State 55. Certainly after the first half, you did not think that you'd be talking about a 19-point Kansas victory. You certainly didn't think, after you gave up 42 points in the first half and Arizona State could not be stopped, that Arizona State would only score 55 points. The second half defense was remarkable for Kansas. Obviously, when you only give up 13 points and a half, like, that's more than just you. That's them missing some shots too, because even the best defense in the world, you're still going to give up some open shots. You know what I mean? But that was an unbelievable second half performance defensively. And it felt like their pride was probably a little bit tested in the first half, and I'm sure Bill Self challenged them at halftime, and they came out, really well. And at the end of the day, like, that's why Kansas won the game. You hold them to 13 second half points and 55 points, you're going to win that game. And obviously there were a lot of things that went well for KU in this one. Hunter Dickinson has his classic double-double. Wasn't his most efficient game, but, did that. DeJuan Harris had a good scoring first half. Zeke Mayo, once again, steadied the offense as being this just consistent go-to scorer for KU. Like, those are all reasons, in addition to these ones I'm about to list and other ones as well, why they won the game. But the ones that really felt top of mind were the performances of Shakeel Moore, Rylan Griffen, and then I think it was just kind of underlined by the energy of KJ Adams. I thought KJ really brought, because I know it sounds silly to say, like, beyond the box score stuff, but the first half felt a little sluggish, and at some point we do need to have the conversation of, like, why does this keep happening? Why do you keep having sluggish first halves? Albeit at least in this one, the hole was only 6 points to overcome, as opposed to like the Missouri or the Creighton or the West Virginia ones where the holes were too big to overcome. So at least, there was a little bit more there. But KJ helped provide that energy in the second half, and it felt like that just started to fester with the rest of the team. And then it felt like Rylan Griffen and Shakeel Moore provided that energy in other ways. And I think this is back-to-back games with Rylan Griffen where he's made shots. I mean, 1 of 4 from 3, so it's not as good as the 4 for 4 from 3 he had in the UCF game. But still, 4 of 9 from the floor, 9 points. But he also was out there making hustle plays, doing everything he could from an effort perspective, and that's what you want to see. And I think the reason you see Shakeel Moore in the starting lineup now for back-to-back games is he's not necessarily going to be, he comes away from this game scoring 8 points, 1 assist, 1 rebound. This wasn't a game that Shakeel Moore is going to look back on one day if he looks back at his past, like, game logs or box scores or basketball reference page and be like, man, do you remember that game at 8 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist? But the impact felt so much more substantial than that. In fact, I on my Twitter, this is going to be still going on, so I don't know where it'll end up, but this is through the first 70 votes. I put, who's today's KU basketball MVP? 90% of the vote was Shakeel Moore from people who have voted so far on Twitter at D Johnson Radio. Again, I don't know where that will end up, but that's kind of how I felt too, right? The impact that he made when the game was not necessarily at a point where Kansas was blown out, when the game was still at a either team can claim this game spot. And right before Kansas went on that big run to kind of put away Arizona State, Shakeel Moore was the igniter of that run. He ends up with 2 steals. They lead to huge highlight plays that just completely changed the momentum of the game, the energy of the team, the energy of Allen Fieldhouse, which obviously is always energetic, but it becomes another level when you're making plays like that. And so when you look at Kansas, and yes, there are certain issues you could talk about, what's their pick and roll defense going to be like, or are they going to have enough spacing, or this or that. At the end of the day, if they just play with a high level of energy, like, at least the floor is going to be higher on the team. You know what I mean? Like, and you're going to end up with results like this. When we've seen them play at a high energy level, they've been able to blow out teams. They've been able to beat some of the better schools in the country, even through some of their flaws. Because guess what? Most teams in college basketball are going to have flaws. Like, there isn't going to be really a perfect team. That is very rare when that happens. And so Shakeel Moore provides this energy for you. He provides somebody else who is a good athlete, who is quick, who is fast, right? When Bill Self talks about being an athletic team, he's not always talking about an Andrew Wiggins who's a 6'8" wing who can jump out of the gym and dunk it. He's talking about guys who are quick. He's talking about guys who play fast, who play fearless, and that is Shakeel Moore. And I think he embodies in a real way what Bill Self is looking for, especially when you add on what he brings to the defensive side of the ball. He is a good defender, and he can make big plays like he did in those 2 steals, and he obviously has that big highlight with the dunk. And so the importance of the performances that you've now seen for really back-to-back games for Rylan Griffen, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head if it stretches back any further than that, if you were to say like 4 or 5 games or something like that. But certainly the last 2 games, and now the last 2 games, I guess you would say, with Shakeel Moore since he started both games, is that you're looking for things of, okay, they lost these games to West Virginia and Missouri and Creighton or whatever. Like, I remember going back to the NC State game. They won that game, but you looked at a lot of the little things that happened in the game, and it was like, yeah, but they're still kind of doing the same team. They just played a better game or made some more shots or played a worse team. You were at home, whatever you want to call it. You're looking for tangible reasons of, okay, not only are they doing better, not only are they seeing wins, but they're doing certain things better, or they're changing things to lead you to the result of why. And then once you can figure out, okay, why is it changed? Why are they doing better? You can decide if it's sustainable or not. And this feels sustainable to me, right? If Rylan Griffen is starting to be the guy you're hoping for that can give you, 18, 20, 25 minutes per night off the bench and hit some threes for you and play with a high energy level, right? That's exactly what you're kind of looking for here. If Shakeel Moore can be that good defender that gives you another good defender and another athlete and another ball handler on the floor, that is what you are looking for. And so it changes what KU's ceiling is as a team if you're hitting on some of these players, right? Now, if you want to talk the ultimate ceiling raiser, that would be if you could figure out AJ Storr as well. But you do get to a point where it's like not everybody's going to hit. If you can hit on Rylan Griffen, and this is the start of that, and you can hit on Shakeel Moore, and this is the start of that. And I think Diggy Coit has given you more than maybe you expected in the preseason. And you hit on Zeke Mayo. It seems like that's kind of already happened, right? If you really just have the one miss in the portal, which ironically is the guy that maybe you were the most excited for, or maybe had the most hopes for in AJ Storr, that still ends up being a pretty good result in the end. Now, will this be sustainable? Will those guys continue to play that way? I look at a lot of what they did, and it feels sustainable to me, right? This wasn't, like I said, Shakeel Moore having a good game because he went 3 for 3 from 3, or Rylan Griffen going 4 from 3. They combined went 1 of 6 from 3, but they both had unbelievable games with game-changing moments for KU, and that's why it feels repeatable to me and feels like it can be the start of changing what KU's ceiling is down the road and in the future. Now, as far as AJ Storr, I do want to touch on that real quick. That was a rough first half. He comes in, he throws the ball away right away. Just looked like he wasn't mentally engaged. Makes a defensive mistake, makes another defensive mistake that ends up leaving Hunter closing out a corner 3 that they did miss. Then he can't secure a rebound, ends up fouling the guy. He misses a bad shot 3, not in the rhythm of the offense. Drives, turns it over. That leads to a side 3 for Arizona State to go up 6. This was all in the span of like 3 minutes, and he played in the first half. And I know everybody likes to pile on KJ Adams because at times the KU offense can look clunky and there's not spacing at times when he's playing out there next to Hunter or Flory or whoever it is. But I've always felt that and I've said before, if KJ was playing 18 to 22 minutes per game, maybe that would be more ideal, right? And I've said it before too, but part of that to me is I'm not blaming KJ. It's almost blaming, I guess, the coach for putting him in that position. Like with Bill Self, like, why are you putting him in that position, right? Like, it's not his fault that he can't do these things, I guess. Like, why are you letting it go that long? But the thing with KJ that I will always love and appreciate, he would die for this team to win. Like, this dude hustles for everything. He wears his emotions on the sleeves. And yes, he would like for that to translate to more rebounds and stuff like that. I'm not arguing against that. He's not always the greatest fit in the world. But I will take that 10 times out of 10 over a dude who is not showing he cares on the court. When you see the videos of him, on the bench or in the huddle, standing at the back, looking disinterested, doesn't look like he cares that much. And maybe that's just, maybe it's been a tough time for AJ Storr and it's hard for him to, figure things out of what he wants to do. But like, for as much NIL money as you're paying these guys, I think it is a fair criticism to wonder, like, how much care level is there? And so, I don't know. It just kind of got me thinking of, like, how much crap KJ has taken. Again, if you want to blame Bill Self for playing him that much, I think that is a fair criticism, but don't take it to KJ Adams because he is doing everything in his power when he is on the court, at the very least. Like, he is giving his full effort. You can talk about the execution not always being there, but he is giving his full effort at all times, and that's not always the case for a guy like AJ Storr. And this goes back to the idea that, like, I think Nick Schwer, who we have on the show here, summed it up perfectly. He tweeted out, like, look at that. Shakeel Moore didn't have to prove he deserves to be on the court by playing a ton of minutes, right? You can do it in smaller minute loads. Which, speaking of which, I was weirded out by Flory Badunga playing that little in the first half. But Flory, I love you to death. Okay, let's get to our game trophies coming up next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find any subscriptions you might have forgot about or that you're paying for twice. It happens to people all the time. You might not even realize you're paying for them, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. One of the best features is the subscription tracker. You can use it to cancel services you're not using anymore. Helps you save a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, you can automatically set aside money for your future. No more stressing about budgeting each month. Cancel your unwanted subscription and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That is rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Continuing on, thanks for making Locked on Jayhawks your first listen every day. Don't forget to check out Locked on College Football for your second listen. Get you ready for the college football playoff semifinals going on Thursday night and Friday night. All right, game trophies. Kansas 74, Arizona State with 55 points. We're going to go best moment. I think just the Shakeel Moore back-to-back steals. Like, those were really good moments in the game, and it leads to 2 big-time buckets. Really changes the way that the game goes. And you look at it, and Arizona State only scoring, as little as they did in the second half. Like, those plays kind of, emphasized were the exclamation point to the defense KU was playing in that second half. So to me, that's the best moment of the game. We have dunk of the game. I think there's some good candidates here. KJ Adams had that good dunk in the first half where it felt like he got his head up to like the top of the box at the backboard. Then you have the Hunter dunk in transition with the Quaintance foul in the second half where like Hunter had missed a couple bunnies. This wasn't the most efficient game for Hunter, but that was kind of like, hey, okay, get in the hoop. You know what I mean? And he gets fouled with it as well. That was a good dunk there for Hunter. You had the steal from Shakeel Moore that leads to the Shakeel Moore dunk. And again, he is the king of dunks for 6'3" or under. I think he had 8 of them last year. I think 28 in his career. So he adds another one to his career there. Then you have the Rylan Griffen dunk, which came off a steal too. And that was kind of cool because it was back-to-back dunks from guys that you don't normally see dunk a lot, right? Like Griffen's more used as a shooter, and with Shakeel Moore, he just hasn't been on the court enough to maybe show that. But also, it is the novelty of this guy who's not the tallest guard in the world, even though he does have those past stats. We hadn't seen it at KU, right? So for me, if I am going to pick the dunk of the game, I guess you have a Flory dunk in there too. I'm going to go with the Shakeel Moore dunk off the steal because I think that emphasized that, people are saying MVP of the game, right? Worst moment of the game, the AJ Storr first half minutes, those were really rough. I think those would have to be the worst moment of the game when I think back to this one. I have a new game award for this one. It's going to be the Flory wow moment of the game. And this is one that ideally we'll be able to use every game because Flory wows you in a lot of different ways. I think we all know what it would have been in the UCF game. For this game, I have two options. There was the play where Jihad gets the ball in the post and tries to work past Flory with a post move. And Flory just he ain't having it. He's just sticking his ground. And he's like, you ain't getting space. And then Flory jumps up and blocks the shot, unlike the hook shot, jump shot, whatever you want to call it. That was a wild moment of the game. And then the alley-oop that he had moments after, it might have been the next possession or a couple possessions after, the ball from DeJuan Harris was thrown well behind him and short. But he's up in the air. He's reaching back. He's grabbing it and he's throwing it down. He makes plays like that, which are not simple, look simple. And that is your, I'm going to go with that one for the Flory wow moment of the game. Offensive MVP for this one, Hunter Dickinson had 15 points, but again, just 5 of 15 from the floor. Rylan Griffen had 9 points for you off the bench, but this is an obvious one, right? It's Zeke Mayo. He had 23 points for KU. He was really keeping you in it in the first half, and then he had a bit of a lull, missed some shots that he normally makes in the first part of the second half, but then he finished strong as well. 23 points, 8 of 14 from the floor, 5 of 8 from 3. Just again, continues to be your most consistent perimeter scorer. And we continue to look at the home away splits for Zeke Mayo, and it's pretty remarkable what he has done inside Allen Fieldhouse, which is really cool for the homecoming kid. Our defensive MVP, you could actually mention Hunter Dickinson, 3 blocks and 3 steals, but I think there were some times that Arizona State was maybe taking advantage of him in the first half that those numbers maybe look. It's almost like with Hunter, he's that corner who is going to maybe give up a touchdown, maybe give up a couple big catches, but he's also going to end up with an interception. And then it just leads to all sorts of discourse of the fan base being but look at the stats. And then other people are no, but you don't understand. So you could, if you wanted to argue just from the stats perspective. DeJuan also had 3 steals and a block, but also the main guy he was guarding, Alston Mason, had 19 points, 15 in the first half. So I don't think I would go with that one necessarily. I think the answer here has to be Shakeel Moore. I mean, Shakeel Moore had those 2 steals. They changed the way that the game went on. And, you look at it for Arizona State, I think he was kind of switching between Adam Miller, who went just 3 of 9 from the floor and had 2 turnovers, and BJ Freeman, who finished just 3 of 11 from the floor with 2 turnovers. Even when he was on Freeman, he was giving up some size, certainly, but he played really well on the defensive end of the court, and that's what he can bring to the table, right? I mean, if you are going to have some spacing issues on offense, you better be a good defensive team. And it certainly helps when you have Shakeel Moore out on the floor, because you're talking about DeJuan Harris, who, is a former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. And even though he struggled in the first half with Alston Mason, you still like his defense overall. You have Shakeel Moore, who's a good defender. KJ Adams has had a good defensive season. When you bring Flory Badunga in there, there are a lot of avenues, even with Kansas's struggles at times against teams who can space you out, again, at times against teams who can, pick and roll you to death. Even with some of those issues, Kansas overall has ranked pretty well on the defensive end of the court so far this season. I think a lot of those guys, the personnel, is the reason why. Let's finish up here for KU. What's next for the Jayhawks? This is Locked On Jayhawks. So on tomorrow's episode, which will be on Friday, because this will be technically Thursday's episode. Thank you if you're listening right away on your late Wednesday night. But Kansas-Cincinnati preview will be next up for you, and then we'll have our Kansas-Cincinnati recap coming at you this weekend, as well as we are in full force of Big 12 basketball season here. Okay, so what is next for KU? Well, they're playing at Cincinnati, and as much as it felt good to win on the road at UCF, and to win by as much as you did, very impressive performance, it still doesn't change all of KU's past road struggles this year and last year. Now these next 2 games, at Cincinnati and at Iowa State, you have a chance to change that narrative. You win both games, we ain't going to be talking about the road struggles, right? Especially the one in Ames, with as good as Iowa State is and as difficult of a place to play as that is. But It's a tough place to play too. And Cincinnati's got a good team. They're reeling a little bit here, but it's certainly a team that can get you on their home court. I mean, they got you in the Big 12 tournament last year on a neutral court, but you'll certainly feel a lot better if you can win this one, because then it would be 3 straight wins versus if you lose this game, you're sitting there 2-2 in Big 12 play going into Ames, which is not going to be comfortable. So this is a very important game for KU. It's a very important game for Cincinnati, who's lost 3 straight games and is trying to, reel their way back up into making it to the NCAA tournament for the first time under Wes Miller. But we'll have a preview for you on tomorrow's show for the Jayhawks Bearcats coming up on Saturday. This has been Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for tuning in today. Hit me up at D Johnson Radio, and we'll see you next time anywhere you get your podcast or on our YouTube page with LOJ.